Hi, my name is Father Jose Antonio Caballero, Father Tony, and I'm so glad to be able to talk to you all about Our Lady of Guadalupe. It is something you don't find easily in English. I don't know why, but it's the main reason why we decided to show these ideas, these impressions we have about our Blessed Mother, the Queen of Mexico, Empress of America. We have a right to know about her. She's our mother, and I'm so happy to talk about her. My field of expertise is not Our Lady of Guadalupe. My field of expertise is the Book of Revelation, but I think we can share some common ideas that can help us understand what we are in front of. Something amazing, something marvelous, something also full of consolation for all of us. So we are going to deal with the following points. First, we are going to address the big problem, both in antiquity and until recently, concerning the apparitions, which is the historicity of it. Is it true she appeared? Do we have documents that back up the reality of the appearances, or we are just based on something that never existed, a legend? Second, the recent discoveries about, especially by bibliography and books which go back to the same period. They are practically contemporary with it. Then we are going to explain the symbolism that we find in the image. We are going to call it like that, image, and the miracle by Juan Diego, one impressive miracle you can also find in the internet, in the YouTube. This been said, so let us start. Okay. During the history of our American faith or Latin American faith, there have been objections to the apparitions. The first one who denied that Our Lady appeared was Juan Bautista Muñoz, who was a Spanish historian and a cosmographer who lived in the 18th century. He was a serious man. He was not someone who said things for the sake of showing off. He knew what he was saying, and he didn't find documents going back to the moment, to the year of the apparition or shortly after that. Our Lady appeared in 1530, 1531. And as important as Juan Bautista Muñoz is Joaquin Garcia de Icazbaleta, a true believer. He was such a fervent believer in Our Lady that when he baptized his daughter, he named her Guadalupe. So when he was in Mexico City, the Archbishop of Mexico City asked him a report under oath on what he could say regarding the apparitions. And his report, which was supposed to be silent, just a personal report from a historian, not a theologian, he says that in his report to the Archbishop, was supposed to be secret, but it wasn't. Somebody got the document and spread it out. He had to flee the country and go to Colombia because people said to him, if you do not believe in the apparitions, you will believe in disappearances. So he had to flee for his life. But I repeat, he was not a theologian and he believed in the apparitions. He said, we don't have documents which were contemporary with the apparitions. So as a historian, I don't have the means to prove it. He also said in his document, this is the first and last time I'm discussing this argument. and he kept his word. Now, a Mexican Dominican also denied the apparitions. His name was Servando Teresa de Mier, for the same reasons. But the serious authors were the first two ones. Guillermo Schulenburg Prado, Abbot of the Basilica of Guadalupe, practically said that Juan Diego never existed, therefore the apparitions are just a myth, and what we have here in the image of Our Lady is but a fake. Stafford Poole, an American Vicentian priest, also denied it for the same reasons. So all the deniers' opinion can be summarized into one. There are no documents, valid documents, that can certify the historicity of the Guadalupean event. We can call it like that. This is a picture of Don Joaquin Garcia de Icazbaleta, a serious person, a historian. His relatives still live in Mexico. I have met some of them. And as he was, so are they. Good Christians, good Catholics. So these deniers are based on the silence about the apparitions that followed 20 years later, as we can see. Some answers we can give to those objections. Bernardino de Sahagún, who was he? Bernardino de Sahagún was a missionary who really got involved with Franciscan missionary, with the Indians, and studied their traditions. He learned their language. And thanks to these missionaries, a language which could have never been put into writing was finally a literary one, thanks to the missionaries. Bernardino de Sahagún was one of them. The result of his investigations, discoveries, was put in a book with drawings, with the help of Indians, both in Nahuatl, which was the language of the Indians, and in Spanish. Now, this original document was lost, but a copy is extant that is called the Florentine Codex. Thanks to that, we have found astonishing coincidences with the image and relevant elements. Jerónimo Mendieta, who was his contemporary, also his comforter, both were Franciscans, both were historians, both were, we can say, archaeologists. Both were men who really wished to serve the Indians and save their souls as good missionaries. And therefore they studied their customs and everything regarding their lives. Unfortunately, their documents, their original documents, were destroyed, together with many other indigenous sources. Reasons are different, very manifold. So one of the reasons is the destruction by fire of the files of the Mexican chapter that is called Cabildo. The so-called crisis of paper that in New Spain, which was the then name for Mexico, obliged to reuse paper. You know, those who invented paper were the Chinese. Thanks to the Arabs who took some Chinese who were able to create paper out of bamboo reeds, were able to introduce that practice in Europe, first through Spain and then to the rest of Europe. Now in Mexico they have a problem, a gap, which eventually was resolved. Now at that time there was a huge crisis of that. So that's another problem closely linked to that. That being said, with those difficulties, Pope John Paul II was really interested in going deeply into the real problem. And he has had over 30 experts from all over the world especially from the United States and Mexico, study the case. He wanted to know the truth. Has Juan Diego really existed? And if he existed, were the apparitions truthful or not? Do we have means for that? Or it's enough with the testimony of Garcia de Icazbaleta and Mr. Muñoz, who preceded him. Now, in other words, what I just said, in 1998, the Congregation for the Causes of Saints created a commission under the command of Pope John Paul II. It wasn't just an idea, suggestion, if you want to do this. No. The Pope gave an order. He compromised his authority behind all of this. The most famous expert on all of this is a priest, Father Fidel González, who has been teaching, or who was then teaching at the Pontifical University called Urbaniana, the Urbanian Pontifical University, and at the Gregorian. Together with another 30 people, as I mentioned before, participated, made their researches and discoveries. They presented, astonishingly, strangely enough, if you want to say, 27 testimonies, written testimonies that go back to the period of the apparitions. And they divided these testimonies into 4 different subdivisions. They call the first type mixed race or mestizos. It was Indian testimonies and Spanish testimonies, or also mestizo testimonies. Testimonies which came only from Spanish sources, those which came from exclusively Indian sources, and other testimonies. And they are going to be as impressive as you can imagine. One of them is the so-called Escalada Codex that goes back to the year 1548, only 18 years after the apparitions. Florentino Codex by Bernardino de Sahagún. This codex is very important, and it is called Florentino because it is extant in Florence, Italy, which is like a summary of the initial codex he had written together with the help of Indians, with drawings and descriptions of the different customs of Indians. The Inin Way Tlamahuizoltica, published in 1649. Inin Way Tlamahuizoltin from 1580. The map by Fernando de Alba Ixtli Xochitl that goes back to the year 1648. The so-called Nican Motecpana from 1590. Nican Mopohua, who was practically the only source that described the apparitions and the dialogue between Our Lady and the Indian. The tone of the dialogue between the Indian and Our Lady is one of the sweetest ones you can imagine, both from Our Lady and the Indian addressing her. Francisco Verdugo Quetzalmamalitzin, which is his will and goes back to the year 1563, and Fernando Alba Ixtli Xochitl's testimony. Now, the second subdivision of testimonies, the so-called chapter certificates, which go back to the years 1568, 1569. The indulgence requested by Archbishop Pedro Moya on occasion of the celebration of December the 12th from 1576. That indulgence could only be granted by the Holy See. The shrine description that goes back to the year 1570, reports of all the events regarding the devotion of Mexicans or the then dwellers of New Spain from 1556. This map is amazing. This is the Uppsala map, prepared for the Emperor Charles V by both Spaniards and Indians. He wanted to know what Mexico City was like, Tenochtitlan. And so they prepared a map for the emperor describing the different locations of the city. It ended up in Uppsala, but it was meant to be for the emperor, Charles V, or Charles I for the Spaniards. And it was composed between 1556, 1562. Now, since also in Spain there was a devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe different from the one in Mexico, the Hieronymites asked for the control of the shrine in Mexico City, because they also controlled the shrine in Spain, or organized it, not in the bad sense. But it was rejected, of course, because the devotion was different. Andrés de Tapia's testimony, which goes back to 1560. Bernal Díaz del Castillo, who was a historian among the conquerors, who came with Cortés, and he's the one who describes everything that took place from the point of view of the conquistadores who arrived in Mexico. His testimony is important. And his book, he lived between 1495 and 1584. Cervantes de Salazar's testimony from 1554, and Miles Phillips' testimony from 1568. Who's this man? This man was a seaman, probably a pirate, who arrived in the northern parts of Mexico, Pánuco. Pánuco is a river that separates two Mexican states, my state, Veracruz, and Tamaulipas. So he arrives there, he arrives in Mexico, and then he writes down everything he sees from the point of view of an Anglican, of someone who has nothing to do with the Catholic faith. His testimony is important because he's not a Catholic, but he is there. He is an Englishman. Now, another important point that proves the historicity of both the Indian, Juan Diego, and the apparitions is the different wills or testaments people left for Juan Diego, who was in charge of the shrine until the moment of his death. So people wanted to give their possessions to Our Lady, and the best way to do that, to make sure their will was respected, is to give it to Juan Diego. How could possibly Juan Diego not exist if there are wills or testaments given to him at that time? This is a clear proof that he existed. And they are dated to the year 1537, only 7 years after the apparitions, through 1580. The will by Bartolomé López, which goes back to 1537. Promissory notes by Maria Gomez, 2 years later. Census by Martin Aranguren, 62. Will by Alonso Montalve, 64. Alonso Montes, same year. Sebastián Tomelín, 72. Alonso Hernández de Giles, 1577. The will by Elvira Ramirez, 1577, and Ana Sanchez, 1580. Again, if he did not exist, how come we have all these wishes, all these possessions given to Juan Diego so that he could organize the cult and care for the cleanliness and the well-being of the shrine? Nican Mopohua by Antonio Valeriano. Valeriano was the grandson of the Emperor Moctezuma. So he is a primordial source of the testimony of the apparitions. And the document is called Nican Mopohua, describing the apparitions of Our Lady to Juan Diego. It's an old Mexican, an old Mexican annals and their boundaries, which is called A, Chimalpahin Annals, Colonial Annals about Tlatelolco and Mexico, Juan Bautista Annals from 1528 through 1586. The apparitions take place some years after the beginning of these annals. The Puebla and Tlaxcala's Annals first, Puebla and Tlaxcala Annals 2, Colonial Annals about Tlatelolco, Mexico City, the Colonial Annals about Tlatelolco, Mexico City 3, Old Mexican Annals and their boundaries B, second part we can say of this one we mentioned before, and the university manuscript. You know, the first university in all of the continent was the Pontifical University in Mexico City. It is important, and its testimony is primordial as well. Then Mexican cantares, popular songs regarding and traditions regarding the then Mexico or Tenochtitlan, the Cross Codex from 1553 through 1569, Techialoyan Codex, Tellerian Remesis Codex from 1562-63, the so-called Tlatelolco Codex from 1450 through the 16th century. Most of these codices have no letters. They are just drawings because, as we said before, the language of the Indians was not a literary one. Thanks to the missionaries, it became a literary one. The Vatican Codex A from 1563, 1570, giving testimony to the apparitions and the devotion. The Gomez Orozco's Curious News. Then Cuautitlan Will from 1559. The Tepecpan Strip from 1298 through 1596. What is this? The whole history of the Aztecs since they arrived in Mexico. Tenochtitlan is represented through drawings done by the same Indians, but also when the Spaniards arrived, they also cooperated into it. And one of them was Fray Bernardino de Sahagún, and we'll see an image of it. Okay, other testimony. Judicial testimonies from 1666, it's a kind of late testimony. The Annals of the Apparitions by Miguel Sanchez, 1648. Luis de Becerra Tanco, 1675. Francisco de Florencia, a Jesuit, 1688. Carlos de Sigüenza y Góngora, 1688, same period. Now, the Holy See sent a man, an emissary, a herald, to collect all the information regarding the apparitions. The Holy See wanted certainty about the Guadalupan event. And so they sent Lorenzo Boturini to pick up as much information as he could. But he was in a ship that ended up sinking. There was a shipwreck, and many important documents were lost, unfortunately. He goes back to the 18th century, the beginning of the 18th century, as we can see, 1702, 1753. Thanks, unfortunately, to this, many testimonies were completely lost. Now, they use a copy of the original image of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Andrea Doria's ship during the Lepanto's battle. This battle took place 40 years after the apparitions. How could it be possible that one of the most important ships in the Lepanto's war could have had the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe on it? There are engravings with it, and I will show you one of them. Now, the United States also has taken part into the devotion. In Florida, some seals and coins were found commemorating the apparitions. It is Father Fidel González who mentions this. It's been hard for me to find these seals and coins. They are not easily found in the internet and stuff. Anyway, let me show you now some of these important discoveries, some of these documents. This is the Escalada Codex. This is the drawing prepared by Bernardino de Sahagún almost at the end. It is a description by drawings on a deer's leather. That is why it is called Codex, about the history of the Aztecs, or if you want to, New Spain or Mexico, from the 13th century until the time of Fray Bernardino and a little later. This is the way it looks now. Now thanks to the computer, we are going to show the same thing in black and white. And this is what comes up. Look at this. This is Juan Diego. This is the image of Our Lady on the mantle. This is Our Lady appearing to him. And this is the signature, Fray Bernardino de Sahagún. No question about that. This is an impressive document. And the date, 1548. How many years after the apparitions? 18 years? This is impressive. This is worth everything. This proves the language of the Aztecs was not a literary one, but we find elements, thanks to Fray Bernardino, which were written texts. Okay? This is the name of the Indian. Nahuatl. These are images from the Florentine Codex, a copy which is extant in Florence, Italy, of the original document that Fray Bernardino prepared with the help of the Indians. This part is in Nahuatl, and these are the descriptions of different things. This is the emperor, this is his hairdresser, the same color as the mantle of Our Lady, which speaks of the loyalty or regality for dignity of queen, just as the emperor was. A human sacrifice in a teocalli or pyramid. Okay? Again, dressers with the same colors and stuff like that. The Indians being dressed in their own typical apparels. This is the front page of this other testimony, which goes back to the year 1649. The way Tlamahuizoltica, whatever. Now, let me show you the Uppsala map. I was very impressed when I saw this. Okay, this is the map that both Spaniards and Indians, our mestizos, prepare for Charles V, the emperor at that time, when the apparitions took place. This is Mexico City at that time. You know, Mexico City is built on a lake. That's why there are so many earthquakes, because there are continuous settlements of the earth and buildings and stuff. This is the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. This is where the basilica, the now basilica, was located at that time. Let us take a closer look at it. There you go. You have the hill, You have the shrine and the name Tepeaca, which now is called Tepeyac. No doubt about it. We are talking about the emperor who was contemporary with the apparitions. This is an impressive testimony. Nobody can deny it. It's there. It speaks by itself. This is an image of the first shrine of the Tepeyac Hill, the one where Juan Diego spent the rest of his life as a sacristan, receiving also different wills and last wishes of people who wanted to give their possessions in order to have a nice and clean shrine for Our Lady. It's been restored, of course, but it can be visited even today. This is a graving of the Lepantos Barro, and you can see the shrine of Our Lady. Another impressive image. 40 years after the apparitions, Lepanto is in Greece. That is where the Turks were defeated by the different troops from Venice, the Roman pontiff's armies, and Spain's. So they defeated the Turks. And the Capitana ship had the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Who can explain that? Now, that is all we can say regarding the historical aspects of the apparitions. So, are we certain that the apparitions took place? Did Juan Diego really exist? The answer is yes. We have different documents. Indians, mestizos, Spanish, and even from an Englishman that corroborate, back up the reality, the historicity of the Guadalupean event. This is what we have. This is the image of Our Lady, the same image that the Archbishop Zumárraga saw when the Indian showed him what he had in his mantle. We call it ayate. We need to explain the different symbols. Okay. The most evident ones are the moon. She can step on the moon. She is more powerful than the moon. She covers the sun, and she dresses with the stars. The colors. This color is the same color as Moctezuma's hairdresser. She is a queen. She is royal. Her hair shows she is a virgin. But she is also pregnant thanks to this black ribbon. There, on her womb, it's clearly seen here. On her womb, exactly on it, we have the Mexican jasmine, a 4-leaf flower. What does it symbolize? I will tell you shortly. We have also the union between heaven and earth. Look, the different flowers come from heaven. Heaven where the stars are. We Mexicans don't distinguish between heaven and sky. For us, it is the same. We don't have that distinction that exists in English. Now, what is the symbol of this flower? It has the form of a face. This is the nose, and this is the lips. But it also has the form of a heart. So to give a heart is to give oneself to the other. It is a means to communicate. This flower also represents the different teocalis, the shrines where human sacrifices took place, and the Indians ate the heart of their victims. There was no more need for that. Our Lady appeared on that mountain where human sacrifices were taking place in honor of the sun god Huitzilopochtli, which is which was the god who demanded human sacrifices. No more human sacrifices were needed. And what else can we say? The angel. Some people say it represents Juan Diego. It is not a boy. The angel has the characteristics of an old man. He has the hair of a mature man. And he brings Our Lady. He touches the earth. He touches the sky or heaven. Then there are 3 mantles Our Lady is dressed with. We have the mantle of the stars, turquoise. We have a sort of silk mantle where the flowers are represented together with the Mexican jasmine or nahui ojin and some other symbols. And finally, behind the silk or the kind of silk-like dress, there is one behind it. So she has 3 dresses, symbolizing again her dignity. Her face is the face not of an Indian, not of a Spanish woman. It is the face of the encounter of races. The United States is called a melting pot of many races and cultures. This is also brought up by Our Lady to us. Now, in the Florentine Codex, we can appreciate how important were for the Aztecs, or the Indians in general, the study of the stars. So we find a lunar eclipse in the Florentine Codex, and in the back we have the same color as the mantle. This is the sky. The image of Our Lady cannot be a painting. This is proved simply by using what we have for pictures. This is the other side of the normal image. There is no sketch. What we see is what there is. As opposed to this painting by Leonardo. Look, this is the sketch prepared for by the artist, and this is the result. Do you see the difference? This cannot be a painting. This is something really special. But from the point of view of art, it is a perfect image. We'll see that. Okay, this is the Mexican jasmine. This is the flower that is on Mary's womb. She is pregnant. Right on her womb, she has this flower. What does it mean? This is the Mexican jasmine. It is really, really a scented flower. In my hometown, we have plenty of these jasmines. Okay, now, if you look at the solar calendar, we find also the presence of the Mexican jasmine. What does it symbolize? It symbolizes the 4 cardinal points, also the 4 seasons of the year, and in the center, the god Huitzilopochtli, or Moctezuma, who fostered his devotion by human sacrifices. He has a knife that comes from his mouth, and on each side, earrings and human hearts, which were eaten by Aztec priests who offered the sacrifices. Mary, by having the nahui ojin on her womb, is speaking directly to the Aztecs. This is not the true God who demanded human sacrifices. The real God is the one she has on her womb or in her womb, in such a way that she can cover the sun, she can dress with the stars, and she can step on the moon. She is higher than all of that because she is the mother of the God by whom we all live. This is the real image, the stone one. We have the knife, the earrings, hearts, and the Nahui Ojin. Now, the Nahui Ojin can also be found in the Florentine Codex. This is another amazing discovery under the aspect of the four winds. But again, it is a symbol of the control that the divinity has on the creation. And again, the turquoise color and stars. This is not something random. This corresponds to the mentality of the Indians. Now let us go to the turquoise color. This is Moctezuma's hairdresser. It is not found in Mexico. It is in Austria. These feathers are from a famous bird that was common in Central America, not in Mexico. In order to form the hairdresser, many birds had to be killed. And those birds were considered as messengers of the divinity. That's why the emperor had this hairdresser with this type of feathers. And this is Moctezuma, what he could have probably looked like at the moment of the arrival of the Spaniards. He knew he was a usurper of an empire. He knew he was taking the place of someone higher than him, Quetzalcoatl, who was a white man, a bearded man, who taught the Aztecs how to sow and till the earth. So when the Spaniards arrived, he thought, oh, it is Quetzalcoatl coming to recover, to retrieve his empire, and he was afraid. This is the Quetzal. Look how beautiful it is, and how many birds they needed to form a hairdresser. The color is very impressive if compared to the mantle of Our Lady. And it's an animal that flies, connection with the sky, with heaven. This is Tulum in Mexico, in the Yucatan Peninsula, in Quintana Roo. The way it looks is the way it is. And the color, again, spoke to the Indians of God's blessing and presence there. It's an amazing place. Okay, this is that flower I spoke shortly before. And this, a while ago, the face, the nose, and the form of a heart, which is better seen here. Now, in the Florentine Codex, I have found this symbol. The symbol represents hills, or cerros as they call them. This form is like a call to the divinity. Where human sacrifices took place was like calling the divinity for mercy. And from now on, it won't be like that. Because heaven now comes to the earth. It connects, the mantle of Our Lady connects heaven with earth. And the human sacrifice that was eaten, or else the heart of human sacrifices that was eaten, now is being offered as a token of condescency, as a token of love and mercy. Again, the image of Our Lady, and something very impressive. The stars coincide with the constellations of the year when Our Lady appeared. Just as the sky was deployed, so to speak, as regards the stars, so does she represent that sky in her mantle. This star here is Sirius, the most beautiful star in our firmament. You have Orion, Taurus, Auriga, Gemini, Leo, whatever. Everything is synthesized in her mantle. Now, one man who is a music expert took all the stars and disposed them according to the canon of music, and have found music behind the disposition of the stars. You can follow that in the YouTube. I cannot show you that, but I mean, it's something which also impresses a lot. Experts say that the inclination of Our Lady's face corresponds to the axis of the earth. Look at that. It is a picture I took from the internet, of course, from that explanation. Her eyes, that's another impressive thing. There is an expert on computers whose name is Aste Tunsman. He was an expert for IBM. When he heard that there were images of Our Lady in her eyes, he found 13 or 14 of them. The same images in one eye are found in the other one. Of course, their size is different because of the inclination of her face. And this is what he has found by using the computer. Well, first and foremost, the eyes of Our Lady are the eyes of a living human being, with the light and the 3 repetitions, so to speak, of the same image in the eye. Every figure that appears in our eyes is found 3 times, and so do they in Our Lady's eyes. And I have purposefully wanted to show you this picture. Guess whose eye this is? It is mine, so there is no copyright. If you think that eye is ugly, it is my fault. Nobody else is to be blamed. Okay. This is one thing which impressed Professor Aste Tunsman a great deal. There is a family there. There is a woman with a baby in her back in the way the Indians did at that time. You can also see that today. And another 3 members of the family. A man, probably her husband, with a hat with 3 edges. So there is a family, and the family is at the center of her eye. It means that he cares for families. They are at the center of her care. Okay, other images. Zumárraga, an interpreter, an Indian here, who's kind of naked, and this is Juan Diego. And this is the same image as before. Now, there is something very special regarding these images. We cannot see their complete bodies because we wouldn't be able to see the family. So only their heads are being shown. This is what more or less could have looked like when Juan Diego showed the Archbishop the image. You can see the face of the Archbishop, which coincides with his face in Our Lady's eye. This is the more or less naked Indian. This is the interpreter. This is Juan Diego. Guess who this person is? Professor Aste Tunsman was impressed to see that this is a black woman. What is a black woman doing there? And the answer is, it was Zumárraga's slave, whose name was Maria. And in his testament, at the moment of his death, he set her free. There is testimony this Maria existed. There is no invention about it. Zumárraga again, in one painting at a time. And now, from symbols, let us move to art. I'm not an art expert. I'm simply someone who likes art, who studied it a little bit. But experts say this. The image forms a perfect ellipse, which is the result of 2 circles. If you go to St. Peter's Square, you are invited to be in either of the 2 circles or else center of the circles of the ellipse. That is what St. Peter's is. So, perfection. What is the perfect figure? Circle for the Greeks. There is also something called golden proportion, which is the perfection of an image from the artistic point of view. From many aspects, everything is perfect. And Our Lady's face is inclined because right in the middle, the two parts of the mantle are sewn together. So also that dimension corresponds to the canon of perfection known by Greeks. Her face, according to Polycletus, the face of a person should be the seventh part of the body. We find the same thing here for the image. Now, the golden proportion is found in nature, as in this seashell, as in one Greek temple. I am not sure whether this is from Pestum in southern Italy or anywhere else. I think it is from Pestum. And again, the division into 7 parts. Who can explain all that to me? All that perfection, all that beauty. One of the miracles that took place recently during the Mexican persecution of the church, the so-called Christian war, was a bomb that was placed in the basilica. They wanted to destroy the image. The explosion took place, and the only thing that happened was that this brass cross was just bent by the explosion. Nothing else happened. Also, some acid fell on the tilma by Juan Diego and did not damage. This tilma should have been destroyed 25 years after it was made or confectionated. It is still the way it is. It is extant in the way it is. And this proves that something happened but did not destroy it. Who can explain that? The tissue of the tilma is rough. It is not something delicate. It is not, I don't know, Nike, whatever. Now, the miracle. I need to say something about the miracle. When Pope John Paul II beatified Juan Diego back in 1990, May 6, 1990, a lady who was on the second floor of a house started arguing with her son. He had just taken some drugs. And of course, there is no mother who likes her son to be taking drugs. And they argued. The man got desperate, and he tossed himself from the balcony to the first level and broke his head. The lady was watching the TV at the moment when Pope John Paul II was declaring Juan Diego beatified by the church. So this lady, in her anguish and sadness and despair, said to Juan Diego in her prayer, "If it is true you existed, please save my son." The ambulance came. The young man was taken into the hospital. Some moments later, he came from the hospital walking with his own feet. That is the miracle. And you can see that in the internet. I have just offered here a summary of it, but I have told you what is the relevant point about it. So the name of the young man was Jose Barragan Silva. He was a drug addict. As I said before, he tried to commit suicide by tossing himself from a balcony 10 meters high. The impact was more or less like a ton or something. Okay. And I think this is all we can say about the miracle, the historicity, the symbols. There are many more things we can learn. And just as Saint Bernard said about Our Lady, the Maria Nunquam Satis, we can say the same thing about Mary of Guadalupe, the Our Lady of Guadalupe Nunquam Satis, the Maria de Guadalupe Nunquam Satis. So let us thank God for this precious gift He has given to us. The purpose of all of this is to love Christ, is to contemplate God's mercy towards us. Mary is a gift for all of the humanity. If Jesus wanted to have a mother, There is nothing greater than that. Amen. Thank you very much.